Welcome, everybody. I am so thrilled to be here for our January Let's Talk TLA. This is a bi-monthly video conference interview with a prominent transformative language artist who I get to interview and explore what it means to be a transformative language artist, explore the type of writing and work that she or he does in the world. And I'm just so honored tonight that we have this fabulous guest, Caits Meissner, who's a poet, an artist, a teacher, a facilitator, doing amazing work in the world. One of the reasons I asked Caits to come to Let's Talk TLA is I actually met Caits. She was a keynote presenter at the first Transformative Language Arts conference the Power of Words. We call our annual conference the Power of Words Conference. And in fact, it's coming up. Hi, Ann. It's coming up again in August. Well, I met you, Caits, when we were in Kansas City, or we were in Kansas, somewhere.
Somewhere in Kansas.
Yeah. And Caits did a fabulous workshop on writing about our ancestors, I think it was. Do you remember the title of that workshop?
I think it was called When We Were Brave, and it was about ancestral and historical personal narrative. Yeah.
So anyway, I got to know Caits during that workshop, and she and I have stayed in touch. And when I was when I got the news that Caits has a brand new hybrid poetry chapbook, poetry and prose chapbook, Let It Die Hungry, that she has just published this fall, or had published this fall, I really thought, oh my God, this is a great idea to invite Caits on and talk about the powerful work that you do in prisons and in schools and in the community and with poets and non-poets. And I just remember how deeply moved I was, Caits, to meet you in person and hear about the way you bring your art and share it into the world. And I'm a fan of your poetry, and I definitely want to have you read tonight, if you would, a little bit from Let It Die Hungry. And as many of you know, welcome to those of you who've joined the call since we started just a few minutes ago, and we are recording. Hope that's not a problem for anybody. And I'm going to, I would love to have everybody give a warm welcome to Caits. And one of the ways that we can do that is just, I'll have us just go around, and all I'm asking you to do is just say, oh, hi, Claudia, your first or first and last name, where you're calling and connecting from tonight over this wide world. And if you have a connection to the Transformative Language Arts Association, or maybe you're curious about us, what is this Transformative Language Arts Association? What do these people do? We share the written, the spoken, the sung word in the world in order to transform ourselves, our lives, to spread social justice, to celebrate how words can have a healing impact on ourselves and communities and other people. All the different kinds of creative ways that we work with people with words. And that's what we're doing here together tonight. So let's just say where we're from, and if you brought a poem with you or a song, whatever you want to share in our open mic, I'll really be delighted. I have to say that after I interview Caits and you have a chance to ask questions and talk about TLA, then we will go into the open mic portion, and then we will close right after that. And I have to say that as powerful as I know what my conversation with Caits is going to be, this bringing together, this risking and sharing and celebrating with our own bits of poetry and prose is a really powerful part of the call. And so I just appreciate everybody who's available to share something for that, because it's pretty amazing to be able to get together across this country on a dark evening in January and meet from the heart and the spirit. So, okay, I'll shut up now. How about if we just, before I formally introduce Caits, just go around and just say your name, where you're from, relation to TLA, and did you bring something to share in the open mic? Thank you. Oh, how about if we start with you, Roy?
Sure. My name is Roy Rangel. I live in Baltimore, Maryland. I've been living here for about 15 years. Hoping to move in the next 6 to 8 months to central Massachusetts. I became a member of TLA in the last 10 days. And
Thank you.
yes.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
You're most welcome. Pleasure and a privilege. And yes, I brought something very short to read.
Excellent. Thank you. When you get to Central Mass, contact me, Roy, because I'm in the Boston area, and I'm happy to try to connect with you, network, welcome you to Massachusetts.
Well, thank you.
Hi, Janet. We're recording, just to let you know. Welcome to the call. Love having you here. Kaylee, do you want to share?
Sure. I'm Kaylee Ferguson. Hello, Janet. Might be my cousin. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I, too, Roy, just joined TLA. One of my storytelling mentor, Doug Littman, told me, actually, I had heard about y'all a long time ago because Jacinta White, I don't know if you know her.
Yes.
But she's a friend, and then Doug was doing this class that I think started today. I didn't sign up for the class, but I became a member of TLA, and I did bring a song.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful. Glad you mentioned Doug. He, you know, Doug was in the same workshop with you, Caits, when I met you. He and I were both in your workshop, and he mentioned he did want to come tonight. He was hoping to bring a poem that he actually wrote in that workshop. So I hope he'll be able to join us. Yeah, he wrote something in your workshop he wants to bring tonight.
I remember, it was very powerful, actually.
Yeah, so hopefully he'll drop in, even if he's a bit late. Wonderful. Anne, welcome. Well, you're on mute. Do you want to unmute? I'm going to jump over to Claudia. Oh, here you are. Hi.
Hi. I live on Vancouver Island, and it's the mic's echoing back there. I live on Vancouver Island. I've written all my life from when I first learned to write, and it's definitely a transformative process. So I'm very interested in words as a way of expressing from something deep within. And I'm fairly new to TLA, and I'm just here out of pure curiosity. Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks for coming from so far and fascinating a place as Vancouver. Wonderful. Excellent. Claudia?
Yes. Hi, I'm Claudia. I'm living in the Boston area. And I'm here because I got this info from Kelly and I was curious about it. Yes.
I know Claudia, she's a poet locally to me, and I'm so glad that you're here tonight. And Janet. We can't hear you. Are you on mute? Why don't you try to work on unmuting, because we can't hear you. That's okay. We will welcome you and we will come back to you. Caits, I want to read your bio as a way of introducing you. Caits is the author of the hybrid poetry book Let It Die Hungry, and the letter all your friends have written you, co-written with poet Titian Woolcock. Her work has won awards and is published or forthcoming in many journals and anthologies, including The Literary Review, Narrative, The Offing, Adroit, and Drunken Boat. Multidisciplinary by nature, Caits experiments with writing's relationship to illustrations and sound. In 2010, her album The Wolf and Me was released to accolades on platforms such as OK Player. Fresh, honest, and loving, Erikai Badu called Caits' blend of poetry and music, naming her, quote, a delicate heart like mine, unquote. With a long history in community arts, Caits currently teaches in prison, public school, and at City College and the New School University. You can help her bring creative writing and workshops and collaborative readings to incarcerated writers. I'll give you the link to learn more about how you can help Caits do the work that she does in prison. So welcome, Caits. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Uh-oh. Let me reach over and see. Might help it. I have a feeling they will. Somebody else had an echo too.
Oh, you have an echo? Okay. Why doesn't everybody else but me and Caits mute right now if you can easily do that? That might help.
Okay. Let's try this. Okay, no echo. We're good now. I'll just stay with the headphones.
Okay, good. Caits, could I ask you just to begin by reading a poem from Let It Die Hungry?
Absolutely. I'd like to start with this poem. It's very accessible. It's also one that's illustrated. Sorry, I won't be really showing the pictures so you can get a small sense. Before I start, are you hearing this echo that I'm hearing, or is it just me?
I'm not hearing an echo.
No? No. Okay. Something kind of funky is happening.
Okay. Kaylee says she's hearing an echo.
Yeah. How's that now?
I'm not
There's
getting
a delay that's happening.
Yeah, it's better.
Better now?
It's better. It was really weird, and now there's just a little echo.
Wasn't that strange? I sounded like a monster for a second. You heard that too, okay? It wasn't just me, right? So this poem is a very short poem. Good, I think we've gotten over the echo. It's called Conversation, and it's a conversation between two girlfriends. I feel dried up, she said. I'm a desert mirage, I said, avoiding mirrors, she said, smoke for breakfast, I said. Sucked sleep's warm mouth nearly to death, she said. Rode a bucking horse all night until the cliff, I said. I've wronged someone, she said. I've turned myself away, I said. I can't stop looking, she said. I can't bear to look, I said. See this deep hole, she said. See this gold star, I said. Stolen, I said. Buried, she said. I'm just a head, she said. A gutted fish, I said. I don't think anyone loves me, she said. I don't think I love anyone, I said. Except you, she said. Except you, I said. There's a little kittens curled up together at the end there. And I chose that poem to open with, Kelly, because I think that sometimes we think about these concepts of working in community in the world as being much bigger and farther away from us than they really are. Often they're conversations we're having daily with people that we love. And I think that counts too as transformative language arts, if that makes sense.
I'm really glad you said that. Yes, the bringing it to the real personal, intimate relationship. What we are doing here tonight, 7 people meeting in this room, how that is like, it's transformative language arts, because we're saying poetry and listening to it, speaking it, and writing it is so important that we are just gonna come together and be with it tonight. And we could be in so many different places. So one of the things that strikes me in your poem, Caits, is, I think you said the line one of the speaker of the poem says is, I can't bear to look, I said.
Yeah.
So something tells me that's very thematically core to one of the themes that you really work a lot with in your poetry and in your work. I can't bear to look. The name of our talk tonight has to do with the poetics of witness, ethics of the writer and community, and on the page. We said, let's get together and talk about that. That would be a good topic. Mm-hmm. So I can't bear to look. Does that line in the poem relate to bearing witness, writing outside the margins, why it's important to do that? What are the consequences? what's the necessity of that for you?
Absolutely. I think that those two lines are key in that poem. They're actually the two lines I think are most important. I can't stop looking, I can't bear to look. And that balance between how much we allow into our psyche and spirit, how much we can allow and still survive ourselves, and how much it's necessary to look as a citizen of this world, as a person who's in conversation with community beyond our home, beyond our block, sometimes not beyond our block. So yes, absolutely. You picked up a very, very, very key piece in there, and it absolutely is an informant. It's a question that I grapple with, all the time in the work that I do. The why of why I do what I do, the question of what does looking mean? How do you look without the gaze, so to speak, but beyond that, and become in relationship with? And where does that? Where do those stories find ways into our work in a way that's honoring and not exploitive? These are all very fine lines, and I think they're really important questions to be asking and to be thinking about. So that moment, that tension in the poem is very ripe and relevant for our conversation tonight. Yeah.
Could you read one other poem? I wanted to ask you about what is real?
Oh yeah, that poem is not in my book consciously. So it's sort of interesting that you chose that one.
Can you say why? Or
I think that it's very tender. It's very close to my heart. In a way that I wasn't. I'm happy to share it. It's published. It's in the world. But it's interesting to revisit that in our conversation. I'm interested in what you're going to ask as well. So.
Would you rather read the prison ghazal, because you had said maybe that? How about if we go to that one?
Okay, sure.
Put you on the spot with the other one.
The other poem, guys, you can read on duendeliterary.org. It's a poem about visiting my husband's country for the first time and grappling with that, with cultural difference. But I will read the prison Ghazal. It's pronounced actually the form, which is kind of fun. It's spelled Ghazal. But absolutely, I'll share this one. You must hush down the voices when entering prison. The mind fears the hyenas stalking outside of prison. If I care for this man with fingers of claw, or harpoon or blade, or a cage like a prison, when he weeps for his past, can I still love women? I hold his head to my chest, spit out the word prison, but I know the shame of a body forced to be lived in, broken and haunted. Isn't this too a prison? To what island do we banish? Strike sin from our prism. Let's pluck all the mangles and boat past the prism. Let them drool on our jewels. A new day has risen, grown bold as an oak. I sneak fruit back to prison. Who will forgive me my silence? Fear of darkness is its own prison. Wash in light like baptism before we die in this prison. Don't let the air fool you. Everywhere is a prison. Can't answer why. Very word is a prison.
Thank you. So I think one of the reasons I was hoping you would read that also, along with the one from Let It Die Hungry. Now, this one's not in your book either.
No.
But can you talk a little bit about it? This one it's a very striking to me in this question of, if I care about this man, then this question seems to me to be connected with what we're talking about, the poetics of witness and the ethics of the writer. So I just wonder if you could unpack a little bit, maybe.
Sure.
Where that poem came from for you and how it relates to TLA work?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me revisit it. It's been a long time since I've spent time with this poem at all. The poem was written while I was teaching in prison, for certain. So a lot of it is just thinking about the way we think about the space of prison as a space away from society, a space of lack, a space of scariness to a lot of people, these scary people who are locked away from us. I was teaching in a maximum security prison as well, is worth noting in that. And really, the piece about the man absolutely could relate to thinking about somebody who's committed a crime. But in this case, I was thinking about somebody who was in a community I was in who had been exposed around some sexual assault, and the response of the community, and how tricky I found it. And all of this is very public, which is why I feel comfortable saying that out loud. And what was really tricky about it is the question for me that's very easy to answer when I teach in prison: how do you love somebody who's done something that might be pretty terrible? When I teach, it's very easy to say, oh, absolutely. I'm in this boundaried space, and my role as a facilitator, I see people, really at their best. But how does that translate to being in the world with people that we love? And what does it mean as a friend? And what does it mean as a community member? And how to grapple with that across the line of inside and outside. And it forces me to really think about the kind of world I want to live in. So a lot of what I'm thinking about often in my work and in the world is, what do we name good and bad in humanity? Are those definitions malleable? How do we deal with violence and crime? These are all the kind of things that this poem is opening up in a fairly simple manner. It's not an extremely deep poem, but it kind of lays out all those questions that I have, and thinking about all the ways that we think about imprisoning ourselves and others, kind of across that spectrum.
How did you get involved in would you be willing to talk a little bit about maybe what drew you to the work that you've done with writing in prison, and how did you end up doing this work?
Yeah, it's a question a lot of people ask me, so it's a question I'm happy to answer. It was pretty organic. As a matter of fact, I was teaching in New York City public schools for a long time. I was working as education programs manager at Tribeca Film Institute, and leaving the role to go back into a little bit more loose of a schedule. I went back to grad school, and I happened to, in the same week, get a call from two organizations. One was working in youth detention and on Rikers Island with youth, and they said, we really need good facilitators. Are you available? And I said, yeah, I'm leaving my full-time job. And I got another call from an organization that worked with adults in prison as a reference for somebody else who had applied to teach. And after a long conversation, the ED said, are you available to teach? And I said, yeah, I am. And what was interesting is my mother reminded me that when I was a kid, when I was 14 at summer camp, I had seen a film that you can actually watch now on YouTube for free. Amazing, the technology these days, called Books Through Bars that the Ella Baker Center put out. And it was really about youth incarceration and the impact on communities. Very, very affecting documentary. And it still holds up, unfortunately, because I played it for my high school students recently. And I used to use that as a teaching tool. I would bring it to the summer camp where I was a camp counselor to talk about the school to prison pipeline. So my mother said, remember you were doing that when you were 14 and you always said you wanted to do this work more deeply. So somehow I had organically circled back around. And then once I was in the space, I was very affected by it, which is a pretty common story for people who teach in prison. And it just became part of the work that I do.
Can you tell us what's your experience with does writing in prison, why does it matter? Why does it matter? What happens there with writing?
Sure. Well, I think that it's the word transformative. I don't think I've ever seen it in such profound action than in these spaces. I have to make a distinction too that I think is important. When I teach in jails usually I'm in a housing unit or a classroom, people are not opting in. So it's a very intense space. It does something different there. In prison, what people don't realize is that most times when you teach a class, folks are opting in. They want to be there. So typically they want to be expressive. They want to change something about their life or their personhood or engage in some healing or engage in relationship building that isn't really allowed for in a space of survival. So you have a room full of people who are ready to kind of go there with you. So what writing does at its best, which exhibits in that space, is it really allows not only people to access their sense of contribution again, personal to themselves and to community, but it also allows people to connect to one another in a way that is how we all connect on the outside, genuine, not because you want something from somebody, because you're connecting to somebody else's soul and spirit. And that is the difference, I think, that between survival and thriving. And not that you're thriving when you go back out of the prison classroom into the rest of your life necessarily from the stories I hear. But for that 2 hours, you're somewhere else and you're somebody else. And that sense of self that gets resurrected is deeply important to really coming back home and re-entering society as a positive person, you know?
So this ability to help people reconnect with a sense of self through writing?
Yeah, a sense of self and I think that's probably at the core of all of it, a sense of self and a sense of contribution with that self.
And how does the idea of witnessing, I'm curious about, your sense of the witnessing manifest in that kind of environment?
Sure.
How is that as part of a healing process, this idea of being witnessed? I imagine it works in prison like it works in other places in the world, but I guess the poetics of witness, I think what you're getting at in that title is something that you're saying something also about the way poetry witnesses, poetry, or poets are a witness, or hearing people speak poetically or write poetically. There's a unique aspect. I don't know. Is that partly what we're talking about?
I think so. And, I also teach, I have taught English comp at the college level. And I can definitely tell you essay writing and poetry, it brings out two different kinds of storytelling, right? Obviously, I think poetry gives a permission to step beyond boundaries. So there's really no right or wrong, as we know, in an expression like poetry, whereas other forms, even fiction, have a lot of rules. I mean, poetry has craft to it, obviously, but I approach it in a lot of spaces through a more socio-emotional vessel than I do as publishable work, although many of my students in prison have been published and are wonderful writers. I think the role of the witness is absolutely very much the same as on the outside, but there's a nuance and a heightened intensity in a space like prison, right? I imagine probably the same thing in refugee camps or, anywhere where people are struggling. In prison, the specific form of witness is, I believe, the witness of a free person, witnessing a person who's incarcerated story. And the weight of that takes on a different, people witnessing each other is really important too, absolutely, in this space, right? I mean, we talk about that all the time, we name that all the time, but then as a facilitator to come in, you represent a piece of the world that, people are cut off from, very deeply cut off from. And to come in and see somebody and say, I see you beyond your green jumpsuit, I see you beyond whatever crime you're in here for, I likely will not ever know what it even is, and it doesn't matter because that's not who you are to me in this moment. I see something happen in that. That's very important. I think it really matters how people see us. I think it really matters how we perceive ourselves through the eyes of others. And I think we take it for granted. We say, I don't want to think about what people think about me, or I don't care, I don't want to care. But the truth is, as people, we are in relationships, so it does matter. So to be able to have somebody come in and say, I see your worth. And I see your worth as somebody who's not in the same position you are. I'm coming from out there and I see your worth. It takes on a real weight, a real depth.
How do you create, I'm curious about if you have any specific tools, what's your approach to creating safety, permission giving? I'd love to hear a little bit about your facilitation process in that unique environment. I imagine it's probably really not a lot different, but it has its unique requirements, but it's not necessarily different from how we would really try to create safety in any kind of a group, or give permission for people to write what they need to write, or don't think they can write, or think they shouldn't write, or all of that. How do you go about that, Caits?
Sure, I think you're right, Kelly, that it is the same. It mirrors the same process. I think the stakes are just a little bit different in terms of the level of confidentiality and the importance of that in that particular environment for how stories get used against people in that space. But You start slow. You definitely don't dive in pushing the button of trauma and say, we're going here, come with me, because, that's dangerous territory to open up. Then you can't close the box, and then everyone's trauma is floating around the room. So scaffolding is really important. You come in slowly and then you deepen. Also, I can push that button when I know a group for 2 years and I understand kind of those bounds. Although I haven't always understood those bounds, and I've definitely been taught lessons. But what I find really important in the process is a couple things that are beyond just the normal things I think we think of, creating kind of a class covenant or scaffolding the depth of what we're walking into. But I think providing a lot of entry points is really important. So in my book, there are, I think, 7 extensive writing prompts that came from a class I taught in a prison.
Oh, okay, good. So I did want to ask you about prompts, but they're in the book. Yes.
And so what I do, this particular semester, we were looking at the space between 2 dichotomies. So we're looking at silence versus noise, masculine versus feminine, rigidity versus mutability, nature versus nurture, all these different polar opposites we really all live between, right? And I will ask questions. I will kind of probe for image making. So there's a lot on the page already when you start to write. You already have a ton of ideas. And then I ask about 1 million questions. And by 1 million, I mean probably 12 to 20. And that is, it offers like many different entry points into the same subject. So somebody might choose to take that and go really deep if that's where they're ready to go. And some people might really stay on the surface and write like a lovely sounding poem. But it really is offering choice to the writer about where they feel they're ready to dive into. And often I think, so that's one important piece I think is options in terms of where we're entering the writing. And the other thing I think is really important in facilitation, especially in space where we're looking at writing that brings out deep emotion and stories of trauma, is knowing when to step back and that's where the word witness comes in, and not be the facilitator and let the room facilitate itself and let participants step in with one another, because really they live that life together in a way that I could never even begin to imagine, no matter how many housing units I've seen or whatever, I can't really imagine that experience. And the healing process really happens between people in the group, which happens on the outside, obviously, as well. So, yeah.
So what I hear you saying in this really important to stop facilitating, let the group express its experience of witnessing.
Absolutely.
And that is essentially a healing, hopefully a healing experience.
Yeah.
Do you have to step in and you've already modeled that? Or, I mean, are there instances where maybe, maybe there are ground rules that you set about how to approach each other's writing, or feedback that you give to each other's writing?
Yeah, well, typically in that space, because it's not about making a book together, I have taught some craft classes that are smaller, but in the larger groups, feedback is typically positive. We're not going in to judge somebody's writing skills. We're really going in to tell stories, to be in community together. So the rules are, typically, we say what we like. And often what happens is it breaks open a conversation that has gotten under the skin of likely 2, 3, 4 people in the room, maybe all of them. And there's a chance it goes beyond the poetry. The poetry is just the door. The real healing comes through. I know what you mean. I've had this experience too. I see your pain and I understand it. And of course, I step in when somebody's talking too long. I try to curb it, or I have to, if there's a tension in the room, which doesn't happen all that often, but diffuse it. But typically, I think, for me, honestly, this is where I really learn as a human being as well. So it's a real gift as a facilitator to get to be part of that dialogue, even if I'm the one watching the dialogue. So
I knew that you would experience this as a process of getting gifts for yourself, and I'm glad you mentioned that. What happens what's your perspective on what happens if we are not witnessed? If as individuals or as members of groups. We don't have that experience of being witnessed. If the speaker, you know, in your poem that you read first, I couldn't bear to look, she said, or I said, I couldn't bear to look. So what if we cannot bear to look? What's your sense of what happens? What is lost if we don't, what's lost for us if we don't bear to look, if we can't bear?
Well, you know, it's a huge and amazing question that I would love to spend a lot of time with and come back, but I'll try to answer the best I can right now. I mean, I think that's our world as we see it right now. Most people can't bear to look. And the truth is, I can't bear to look at many things as well. I mean, I'm not exempt from that. I turn on the news and I want to go hide in a cave and never come out again. I can look in the specific roles I serve. But if I'm looking too much too often, you know, I feel like I'm starting to unravel, because humanity is beautiful, but it is also quite horrific. And I think what we lose when we don't look at all, we don't choose to look anywhere, which we know many people don't. You know, if you're watching this call or you're on this call, you're likely or somebody who's looking, I would imagine. But if you're choosing not to look, I think what you really lose is a piece of your soul. I think it's that dire. And I think that you lose out on the full experience of being human and what it means to cross any lines, cultural lines, gender lines, lines of identity in any form or fashion, class lines. A lot of people don't do that. And to me, that's tremendously sad. I mean, not just for our state as a world community, but on an individual, personal level, what you miss out on when you don't get to see the blessing and gift of many different kinds of people and the richness that infuses your own existence with. I think that's why artists, we're often much better at that, because we're looking to create. So we need to be able to see all of that. I don't know if I've answered the question at all. I've just been rambling on, but that's what I came to.
It's a big question, but I see some nodding. So is this experience for you and then I'm going to really open it up. I want to give everybody a chance to ask you anything or tell you anything. Is this process of writing for you, of being a poet, an act of witnessing yourself or being witnessed? Is a poem a way of asking for to be witnessed?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I think when we put our work in the world, there's a lot of emotions that go with putting our work in the world. You know, it's scary, it's exhilarating, it's depressing, it's amazing, depending on what moment of what day we're thinking about it. But I think ultimately, we desire to be witnessed. We desire to be seen, not only in the gifts that we give, but it's another form of connecting. So when somebody tells me that they related to what's in the book, obviously I don't just feel witnessed, but I feel in connection. Mm-hmm. So I think in connection is a really important word for me. It's interesting, this particular book, there's a lot of abstraction in it, because I was trying to write about these big questions without necessarily revealing at all people's stories or specific experiences, walking a line of what I can and can't talk about in my work, which I'm always kind of pushing that line because people are very interested in obviously the space of prison, because it's so hidden from us. So a way of being witnessed, a way of dealing with what it means to be a witness, a way of really being in the questions and working through them. And I didn't come out with any answers, I'm sorry to tell you, just more questions. But yeah, I think it is important to me. And I think when I'm not putting my work in the world, I can feel the difference in that.
Everybody may have noticed I have put up a screen, the screen where you can learn about Caits' book, Let It Die Hungry, a collection of poems bursting with life. It's at Caits' website, caitsmeissner.com. I will send and post another link to that. Let me open it up. Caits, you've been so generous in your sharing, but I would love to just open it up and give everybody a chance to unmute. Just raise your hand, unmute. Was there something you wanted to ask or respond to? And I just want to give us a few minutes to do that before we move into the poetry open mic. It's your chance to talk and ask Caits anything. Or just say, what was it like to listen to her poems?
So I'll speak. The poems were just, it's like another dimension of imagery for me. The format of the first one was, to me it was, that dichotomy that you were talking about, and it was, you can see yourself in both characters and that kind of stuff. So that was beautiful. But even more touching for me was when you were talking about the cost of not looking and not witnessing people. That just, it's really timely. And I think we all have people in our lives and families that can't bear to look, and I can see it, in people I know that I wish would come along. And as Jill Scott says, the singer says, everybody can't go. and it's hurtful to watch someone not go, or not be able to witness things. But my question for you, Caits, is the flip side, which is, what have folks in your classes told you about the transformation of them being witnessed? In their own words, have they talked to you about it? And then, of course, this might be obvious, but what is the cost of people not feeling witnessed? And how does it link into that school to prison pipeline? And
Oh, well, thank you, first of all, for all of your beautiful feedback and yes, timely, and yes. These are obviously enormous questions. I think I'll start with the cost of not being witnessed. I mean, I think we see that all over our world every day. I think about it even when I'm going to the corner store and talking to the guy across the counter whose family's in Lebanon. He hasn't seen him in 2 years. He's raising money, and watching how people interact with him, and just thinking, what is your identity outside of here? And what do we give up in order to be in the world and to survive in the world? So that's such a random example, but I think about it with my students. I think about it with elderly people in our culture, in our society. I think about it. There's so many spaces where people are not witnessed, and it's a painful energy that we carry around with us, I think, or that we're in, kind of next to all the time. Who's seeing me? Who cares about me? I think that goes down to our most basic needs as a human being. We think about Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? On the bottom, we need food, shelter, water. We also need love. We also need to be seen. And we need to think that we're okay, that there's goodness in us, because otherwise what happens is the cycle of self-punishment, which is a very intense feeling. If any of you have ever had deep bouts of guilt or anxiety even, it can be very physical as well. I think it can really kill us in the end. And it doesn't mean that all of us need to be on a stage for certain. Many people would not want that at all, but we need a few people who see us for who we really are and for the spectrum of who we are. I think. I'm sure there's a lot of psychologists who could talk about that a lot better than I could.
They might talk about it from books, but you have the experience, right?
Well, thank you. It's a great question. And in terms of what people say about their experience of transformation, I mean, it's life-saving. People talk about all kinds of things opening up in a space of writing and sharing their story and being seen in their story and hearing other people's stories. A sense of value comes back. All of a sudden they're involved going to college classes or going and deciding to try the play out now. Life returns, vibrancy returns, and sometimes I'm like hesitant to even talk about that because it feels like it's not just me. It's, you know, it's what happens when any facilitator goes into a space. It's what happens when anybody in the room becomes a facilitator in the space. It's what we co-create together. And I think that, I mean, the transformation is profound, but I don't know how to quite measure it. But it has been talked about quite a bit. I mean, I think one of the clearest ways it's ever been told to me, and I know other facilitators have been told this too, because I talk to people who also teach, and the line, for 2 hours, we feel like we're not inmates. It's the only time of the week I feel like I'm not an inmate. When I'm here, I feel like a human being.
Right.
And that, I think, is pretty amazing. I hope that answers.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Another question or comment for Caits?
Yes, I have a question.
You're on, Roy.
Yeah. So, talking about witnessing and the compassion that's involved in truly witnessing another person, or in receiving the compassion when being witnessed by another person. I'd like to hear what you think about how witnessing in a simplistic sense is contingent on having another person in front of you, or looking at you, if you will.
Well, that's a great question.
And then a step further, is it really contingent on that? Can one have compassion for oneself? Can one witness oneself?
I think absolutely. I think that's a beautiful question, and I think people do it in a lot of ways. Number one, with spirituality. I think a lot of witnessing goes beyond the me and you sitting across from each other, and this idea of being connected to something much larger, and being forgiven by something much larger that is also ourself, because we're also part of the universe's energy.
Right.
I see that a lot. That's very common, I think, and I also see it. I think about, for example, somebody like the poet Etheridge Knight, who was incarcerated for many years and became a famous poet while incarcerated, passed a number of years ago. And I think about his journey. I don't know it entirely, but I don't think he took a class, for example. And I think that the act of writing was absolutely 100% self-witnessing. And then the act of putting that in the world took it even further. So no, I do not think it's necessary, but I also think it's very hard to begin that process. So if we get to sit in a circle and I witness you, that's a step towards you being able to take that and really continue it when I'm out of the room. Yeah.
Roy, Kelly here. I just wanted to jump in and say how much I love that question too, and I'm so glad you asked it. You know, I immediately thought of, and I'm sure I'm not the only one on this call whose mind went in that direction. You know, I started writing a diary or journal when I was like 13 years old. I think that was totally about witnessing the self, and I taught journal writing as a healing practice for many years, and as transformative language arts. You know, healing, journal writing, journal therapy is absolutely something that is really deeply connected with what TLA is. And we have many journal therapists and in our organization and who do that work. So for me, a lot is about that. The diary, the journal writing is that place where you start witnessing yourself, where you may say what you need to say for the very first time. Christine Rayner, I can't remember which writer I was reading about this concept of the silver lining voice. And I think it connects with what you're talking about, Caits, that spirituality, that in writing in our journal, in writing in our diary, we can connect with that higher self, with that silver lining voice that lets us pour our heart out and then listens and comforts and is tender to us there. If that can begin inside ourselves with writing, how powerful that is. Even if we're not ready yet to share that journal writing, how we can, as transformative language artists, remind each other that we can access and cultivate that silver lining voice within. Progroff, Ira Progroff in journal writing, his techniques about the dialogue and that gestalt, that you could create actually some gestalt therapy with yourself by dialoguing with parts of your body, and having these conversations. So I'm really so glad you talked about that, where we can start from just the poetics of witnessing the self. God,
journal writing is you hit the nail on the head, Kelly. Thank you for that. And thank you, Roy, for the question.
Sure.
Yes, and then I think you're talking about it too, Caits, this idea of the artist, the poem, if we write the poem, that is also, even if we don't ever publish it, we've shaped that story, or the song, we have shaped it for ourselves, and we have listened. And if we've listened with some tenderness, some compassion, all of that, then we're changed by it. But I definitely think it's this interesting idea too. There is a difference between being witnessing ourselves and having that other human body. And I'm not sure we've probed the depths of all of your question, Roy, because I think there's angles to it that we could stay with all night.
I think we need both ultimately as well, right?
We need what?
We need both, because anything you get witnessed too much by somebody else and you rely on that external. There has to be an internal and external process happening in tandem, really, ideally.
It's something to really unpack more, though, because I think, you think about the priest, you think about a confessional, the person is in front of you, but you don't really know the person. Mm. And in this digital age, we have so many other possibilities for how we can share and be witnessed in unusual ways. So I think it opens up a lot of other questions that we don't have time to answer right now, because we have to witness each other's wonderful part. We're going to switch into the open mic part. And what we're going to do with this open mic part is, those of us who have a poem or a song, and Caits, I really would love to ask you to just share one more from Let It Die Hungry in this part of the call. And if you've located one, that's terrific. If you're going to sing one for us, that's also wonderful. You may want to unmute if you haven't. We can go in any order. It's really kind of a spontaneous thing. It's like who's ever ready. And then we will close out the call, and who's ready to go?
I got to run out of the room, but I'll be back.
Okay, thanks for telling us.
Not me.
All right.
Anybody else ready?
Yeah, I can do this. So I wrote this 5 days ago, last Friday the 6th. And I had no idea who I was writing it for, so I guess it's for you. Gently falling flakes of light, lightly, drifting into hills of heavy snow, slowly flowing down slopes of silence. Quiet cold, calling to a hidden child's heart, saying, come, come, come lie down and learn this lesson of the soundless death, and be still with me. Mama is dead.
Thank you.
Wow. It's powerful.
Thank you for going first, Roy, and thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Very moving. Thanks for writing it for us.
You're welcome.
Who else? Hi, Claudia!
Yeah, I have a little one about a witnessing process. Yeah, so, and I wrote that last fall, and it's called Tree Pose on the Cancamagus. In the autumn of your life, you stand tall on the exposed river boulder in tree pose, growing your roots, reaching up to the sky. Truly, I received the best presents in the healing magic of false light, when all types of trees reveal their structural strengths.
There's some great writers on this call.
Yeah.
What a treat.
I love that one. I've heard it before and I love it. Okay, Kaylee, I think might be coming. I hope she's coming back. Caits, are you ready to go again? Well, we're waiting for
Yeah. I have, well, you know, I was going to read a different one, but I think I'm going to read this one, considering that we spent most of our time in prison tonight in our conversation. I always am wanting to pay homage to a particularly important class to me in my heart that I taught for a little over 2 years. It's called Praise Poem, and it's for the poets at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility. The circle's purpose is to see each other. Our unspoken rule, commit to looking. We were born and we will die. Everything in between is filler, debatable. For example, we have hated a woman for snatching our man away like morning eggs. We stay awake at night counting constellations of guilt. We both feel menstrual today. Don't talk to us. We call our mothers for comfort, and if they answer, tenuously measure the distance between truth and the length of rain. We read books to remember stories not of our own making or mess, and thank God they are good, and thank God they are tragic. Tragically, we both wonder if we deserved anything good at all, to feel beautiful or enjoy the pleasure of another body when we've screwed or screwed up. We dream of undisturbed sand, covering each track and vanishing. But in this room, we crawl through the window inside, dig up from burial the dusty banjo of memory. We play on childhood's climbing tree, branches shedding crab apples snatched up by the deer. And we can praise the fawn for cleaning the lawn with her hunger. We can name her tracks in fresh mud. We can call her kin, coo the name we've crowned her when she shows her face in the damp morning grass. And though some of us didn't have backyards, or a steady bed, or a tree to love, we can write a porch into the scene, or a birdhouse, or untie a hurt until it stretches its arms out wide as the sea. We can invent this common history, waking up what is untouched and tender, lit deep inside our body's vast night. We can remember it has been proven that we are made of stars, always vibrating, sparking. Even if it cannot be seen by the foolish eye in each era, there we are, unmistakably, a presence growing larger. Yes, we are spinning the entire revolving sky.
Yes, thank you so much. Glad you read that one. We have Kaylee, and I thought we had one more song that was going to be offered, but in any case, Kaylee, you want me to go before you? Are you ready?
I think I'm ready.
Okay.
I will say that the what you were talking about, Kelly, and Caits, you were touching on this about the internet and, you know, all the different ways we can be witnessed. So I'm originally a storyteller, if you can't tell by me talking. But I actually, when I first became a storyteller, I was writing songs, and I never thought that I was a songwriter. And one of my big issues is sharing the songs that I've been writing since like 2002, and how it's almost satisfying to just witness myself when I sing them to myself. But I feel this push to share them, and then there's the whole music industry stuff. We won't get into that. So this song is part of a long form story. And it's the main character is this big brown failed magician, and everybody in her family is slender and pale skinned, but she never knew her mother. And she's at the lake where she frequents this lake, and her mother's face shows up in the face of the moon that's reflecting the lake she's looking into. And this is what her mother sings to her. Now let me know if you can still see me. I got to pull up the words. You still see me?
Yeah.
All right. And it's in Spanish and English. I'll sing the Spanish first, and then you'll hear the English. Eres la femenina divina, preciosa como obra de artista. Tú manejas el mundo de encima, qué valor, femenina divina. Do you love your divine feminine? Can you filter what you're taking in? Realize that you make the world spin when you love your divine feminine. Sabes, sabes cuánto ofreces más que la plata o el oro. Joyas espirituales mereces, tú divinas la reina de todo. No, no, what you are worth, more than money can spend. Jewels in spirit and sight, there's no end when you love your divine feminine. Ligera en peso parece mejor y quieres la piel blanca ya. Vergüenza no debe cambiar tu color, cuerpo flaco no es tu verdad. Slender skin seems perfectly made, the lighter the hue, the more pure. And you hate your tone, wish your color would fade, and you think being thin is the cure. No, marrón y redonda, como la tierra, eres la naturaleza. Mija, tu alma es la belleza femenina de pura nobleza. Brown, brown, just like the earth, nothing more natural than you. Daughter of mine, your soul is so true, your divine feminine shining through. Eres la femenina divina, preciosa como obra de artista. Tú manejas el mundo de encima, qué valor, femenina divina. Do you love your divine feminine? Can you filter what you're taking in? Realize that you make the world spin when you love your divine feminine.
Wow.
Wow. Very, very, thank you so much. That was gorgeous to hear and experience. Wow. I am wondering, I don't think Anne or Janet, are either one of you going to share? I see you're both muted. Okay. I think then that I'll read the last. Mine is very short. It is a poem about, from a photograph that I took of milkweed. It's called Milkweed, Late December. You are a seed, one in particular. I am empty of milk, a weed, wintering husk, a country you belonged. August was sun-sealed, your pouch, my plenty. November is blown. You are fastened to ruin. So what if you waste your one, your only? So I see Anne moving around back there, and but I don't think she's going to be sharing. What do you think? Was I right that the hold on one second, that this part of it, this has also been really special too?
Yeah, thank you all, because it's really nice that, Kelly, this format is beautiful, that it goes like this, and you all made me feel very full, so thank you.
Well, such an incredibly important topic. I just want to share this screen. There you go. So what I'm trying to show everybody is just a quick screen view of also, if you've really enjoyed the experience of tonight's call, as I say, I had the great honor of meeting you, Caits, at the Power of Words conference that the Transformative Language Arts Network produces every year. And our conference in 2017 is going to be August 18th through 20th in Saco, Maine at the Ferry Beach Conference Center. And I believe we're going to try to go to back to Goddard College in Vermont the following year. And, you know, it's just a phenomenal experience. People like us, this call, it's kind of like 2 days of what we did tonight. You know, you just meet great people, you talk poetry, you present, you go to workshops, you experience the tremendous artistry, the connection, the community that we shared on the call tonight. So please take a look consider coming to the conference and saying hello. I am pretty certain I will be there. And I will hope to see some of you there. And feel free to also just write me and ask me any questions you have about it. Caits, you're just, you blow me away. I love your work. I love the way you read your work. I love how challenging it is, how brave and bold you are as an artist and as a human being. And I love getting your newsletters. And I encourage all of you, if you're not on Caits' mailing list, I don't think you send out that often, maybe once a month.
I try to do once a month, unless it's something special happening. And you get a free book of 100 writing prompts if you sign up.
Oh.
So I think
we gotta make it enticing. We have to do our secret, you know?
But,
we like freebies. Okay.
and Caits is one of the artists, you know, and I get her newsletter. I read it, you know, because I'm interested in what she has to say and what she's thinking about, what she's reading, and that kind of thing. But then I also urge you to buy a copy of Caits' book, Let It Die Hungry. And she's given us a very juicy preview of what's in her beautiful hybrid poetry and prose chapbook. And well, there's more illustrations, there's prompt, there's all kinds of stuff. And also, it's possible to donate to the work that you do with prisons. Is that correct?
That's right. No pressure, obviously. The official campaign is over, but it's ongoing. Instead of doing a traditional book tour for this publication, I decided that everywhere that I do a public reading, I would also like to bring the work to facilities in the area, prisons and reentry programs. So I'm about to go to California in a few days to do men's jail, a men's prison, a women's reentry program in the Bay Area, and then move over to LA and do youth detention center and a organization that also works in youth detention, but working more with adults in their community, other facilitators. So if you're interested in dropping $20 in that bucket, it's always welcome, but not necessary. And Kelly, I just want to say thank you to you as well. I deeply respect you and your work as well. It's an honor to be in conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kate. And thank you, Roy, Kaylee, Claudia,
Pleasure.
Janet, and everybody was here on the call tonight. I mean, you just made it a wonderful experience, and we've recorded this, and it will. I'll make sure everybody who sees the link and gets the link in case you want to watch it and hear it again and have a chance to hear the beautiful words that were shared tonight. So please stay in touch with Transformative Language Arts and let us know if we can help you work on anything in the world. And Caits, thank you. Good night. Thank you for coming.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to meet you all.
I learned a great deal. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So glad. Bye-bye.
Be well.
Yeah, contact me, Roy, about Central Mass.
Sure will. All right.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye.
you, Claudia.